Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys,
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
I want you to introduce yourselves and give me your Twitter handles too.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
My name is Craig Mason. he always says that on screen.
Oh, just like that?
No, he does a weird thing. Like he goes, Craig Mason. Or he does it different every time. So, I figured I could do it.
Like script podcast jokes.
Yeah, that's a script notes podcast. So
Script Notes
that's a
podcast.
throwback to another script notes or a reference of another script. Anyway, so
All right.
my name is Jamie Nash. That's kind of what he would do.
It works.
There you go. Every time he does something different, he's a genius in podcasting. So my name is Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter and author of the book Nomad.
Is that book on sale anywhere, Jamie?
On sale now at Amazon.com.
Dude, is it as badass as you made it sound?
Yeah, it sounds kind of like a romance or something. The way I made it sound. Huh.
It's a little bit sexy there. Yeah.
Hot, steamy sex in space on
space.
Amazon.
In space
With aliens and is it
Anyway,
species?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nomad is on sale. Please go buy it. Buy 100 copies for everyone you know at Christmas, and leave a lot of reviews because that's what I really need.
That's awesome.
And Twitter handle is Jamie_Nash.
And I'm Bob Rose. I'm the CEO of Thunder Grunt.
Yes.
Yeah, and my Twitter handle is Thunder Grunt Bob. Wow, creative.
It's shocking.
It's
dude.
shocking. Who would think? But so today we're gonna do a throwback episode.
Yes.
We're gonna talk about a movie that probably a lot of people will go, why even bother?
Why talking about
Why
it?
talk about it? We're gonna talk about Pulp Fiction.
I think there's some instructive stuff.
Yeah, there is. And this, I believe, is an Academy Award-winning screenplay.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And Jamie, could you tell us how successful was Pulp Fiction?
Pulp Fiction made worldwide $213 million in
1994.
1994. And just to give it a feel, let's take a
What
look
was the
at
budget of Pulp Fiction?
$8 million here. That's what
Okay.
it says.
Whoa.
That's incredible. I mean,
There
it's an
you
indie
go.
movie, so yeah. I mean,
And it was one of those movies that showed that indie movies could be profitable. Like there could be a big business in indie movies. If you look at 1994, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, Speed finished right in front of it at number 8, making $121 million. So Pulp Fiction made just a little bit, beneath
less
Yeah.
than Speed. That's amazing.
Speed.
Wow.
Right above Pulp Fiction is The Mask. It came in at number 9 with $119 million. Right behind it, this is kind of amazing, is Interview with a Vampire at $105 million.
Wow.
movie-
Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Then,
We
then,
don't hear much
Mid-90s.
about it anymore. Either.
Yeah,
but
I love that
if you
movie.
look at all the movies in 94, they're all studio pictures except Pulp Fiction is the one indie. It's Forrest Gump, Lion King, True Lies, The Santa Claus, Flintstones, Dumb and Dumber, Clear and Present Danger, Speed, The Mask, Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
So Pulp finishes at number 10
It
on that list.
cracked the Hollywood's
Yeah,
tent poles.
and
On an
look-
$8 million budget.
Yeah.
looking at it, you have to go pretty far down the list before you find another independent film. Maybe 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Okay.
And right after that, Natural Born Killers at
Okay.
25. Just
It's,
And no Tarantino script.
another Tarantino
Right,
script.
yeah.
Yep.
wow.
Okay.
Wow, he was on fire that year then.
He was on fire.
I mean,
Shit.
Fuego.
the influence. We don't really talk about influence and stuff that much,
Yeah.
but like the influence of Pulp Fiction is pretty far and wide. Let's be honest.
It's
Yeah.
one of those movies that everything changed after it came
Yes.
out. There were so many
Mhm.
movies that had even the look or something, the music. There would be some kind of
Mhm.
influence, if
Style.
not the actual storylines, like Snatch
Yeah.
or something like that.
Right. No,
Yeah.
they kind of created this genre that did exist already, but like didn't
Yeah.
exist in this way. I guess
That's right.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
be
think
like
you're right.
trying to make movie poster quotes here, but like
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of research. I told Jamie I was doing research last night of just for this episode. Not so much about the movie, just about like surrounding stuff about the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of the
'Cause-
errata about it is nuts about how people look back on it. Like,
Right.
you know, like how it did like kind of just blew people's minds. Like I was
Yeah.
too young to remember.
See, I have a I
you know,
remember the
so.
day I saw it. I do remember. It was a very kind of. There was a whole bunch of reasons I remember the day I saw it. So the day I saw it, I played paintball with a friend of mine. And I think I only played paintball like 3 times in my life, but I went to play paintball, and that guy worked. Anyway, I got a job becoming a computer game programmer because of that paintball game, because my friend was an artist at a game company, and then I eventually got a job at the same company
Wow.
based on that paintball. Like I was like, I'm a programmer. Oh, I think we're looking for programmers. It's kind of that. And then that night with another friend that went to play paintball, I was like, I want to see Pulp Fiction tonight. It was a Saturday, and I went and saw it that Saturday after it came out on Friday. And I remember sitting in the back of that movie theater and just being blown away by this movie. So
Mhm.
it's very memorable. I was at Westview Cinema in Catonsville.
Yes.
I remember watching
Holy
it. I
God,
can remember
yeah.
the screening.
Right.
I can totally remember the
I
screening.
missed that theater.
I was not lucky enough to see it for the first time in a theater. For me, this was like a late night HBO.
Yeah.
What I
didn't see it in the theater either.
I was
14.
blown away.
Yeah.
But I was like, what is? I didn't know what it was. It felt like a late night movie with famous people.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I was like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
It's unexplainable.
So I was a movie nerd at this time for sure, but I was into Sundance and Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah,
I knew all about
Okay.
Reservoir Dogs, and I kind of wanted to do this, but I was a computer programmer, so I wasn't going to do it. But I still kind of paid attention to it, hoping one day and looking at movies like Reservoir Dogs and saying, maybe I could do that one day. But the one thing I remember about Pulp Fiction, not only did I love Reservoir Dogs, and that was a big thing, but David Letterman, who I was a huge fan of, talked about it like every night leading up to it, like as his favorite
Wow.
movie. So Letterman was hyping it.
Really?
I love Letterman. I
Yeah.
love Reservoir Dogs. So I was super excited to see it.
And,
That's what I remember.
That's
Yeah.
I was 14. I wasn't like a cinephile 14-year-old.
Right.
I saw it on like VHS as a rental. But on the DVD, do you have the DVD? Either
I
of
had
you?
a Blu-ray.
Is the Roger Ebert, the Gene Siskel special on it?
I'm pretty sure
They
it is.
did, they did that at the movies,
Yeah.
and in the '90s, in the mid '90s, that was a huge show. Like
Sure.
every
That was
week,
that was film criticism.
that was film,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
They did a 1
That
hour
and
special.
Joel Siegel.
Yeah,
No.
and him too.
Sadly, now this is film
This
criticism.
is they did a 1 hour special just on Pulp Fiction when
Yeah.
it came out. I mean that's saying something about how it was received in the film world for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that, who wrote it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know. Okay, Quentin Tarantino,
Yeah.
right? But there's another
Quentin
name here. that gets
Tarantino
lost.
gets the screenplay credit, and then Roger Avery gets a story by credit.
story by credit, right?
And there's a whole history and mythology that goes into the writing of this particular script. There's a good book on it by, I can't remember, Christine Vachon, I think. It's called Killer Instinct, and it's a
Okay.
book I read in the 90s like 3 times. Here's a weird Jamie Nash aside. I probably said this before, but my first manager, who was also Gary Dauberman, remember I talked about him,
Yeah.
the guy who did It. So he was the assistant to this woman named Catherine James. Catherine James was Quentin Tarantino's first manager, and I think he fired her right on the eve of Pulp Fiction.
Of release of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, because he
Oh.
had outgrown her,
Gotcha.
And she was this kind of motherly type. She passed away a few years back, but she was this kind of motherly type that would let people like Quentin Tarantino live at her home. Like he lived there
Wow.
during the Reservoir Dogs day and stuff like
Wow.
that. So this is a total aside, but she's in that book a lot. Like a lot of that book is quoted. So part of the
Okay.
reason I think I read that book was she was my manager. And I was like, oh wow, she did all, and it was like fascinating to me.
That's awesome.
And in my
That is
early
awesome.
days of screenwriting, Adventures of a Teenage Dragon Slayer was she was managing me when I had that script, and I remember she she would send my scripts to Quentin Tarantino's mother to give notes.
What?
I would get notes from Quentin Tarantino's mother.
So is he the child of some cinema lovers?
He's the child of a cinema lover who used to take him to all these grindhouse movies as a little kid, and she used to go
interesting.
and see it. And she was a very sweet woman she would never really give me notes. She'd say, "This is great. It has a great voice." And she'd give me some positive.
That is so
But yeah,
weird.
it
I
was
was
a
not
bizarre thing.
expecting that
Yeah,
to be
it's-
what you're gonna
It's
say.
probably
It's
the-
relevant, Jamie.
It's super
These are
relevant.
these weird stories that I never have a chance to tell anybody.
It's
So
great.
I got to lay them down.
No,
for
it's our
history somewhere.
Tarantino episode
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
So why not
exactly.
just
Yeah. So anyway, Quentin Tarantino's mother and me are tight. Now, by the time she was my manager though, Catherine James. Quentin had long gone on, and there wasn't bad blood because she was a sweet, like motherly figure that I was always proud of Quentin. But at the same time, he kind of screwed her over and went with the big managers around
Yeah.
the time of Pulp Fiction. It made sense. It's what happens in Hollywood, and she gets it, he gets it.
I
But
wonder
at
if
the
that
same
was
time-
the influence of other people on him, because he was probably having everybody in his ear,
Yeah.
like, you got to do this now.
So-
You got to do this.
So I'm not
Yeah.
sure that I think Roger Avery may have lived at her house. I can't remember. There were a bunch of them. I know the guy who did My Best Friend's Birthday, which was Quentin's first movie that
Okay.
nobody's ever seen.
yeah, right.
I think she managed him when I was with her. She managed him. But anyway, let's get to Roger Avery. Let's skip to the chase. So Roger Avery gets a story by credit. Pulp Fiction actually started. I was telling Bob this, and there's a little bit of mythology, so some of this might be exactly right. There might be more to the story. Pulp Fiction apparently started as like an anthology that they wanted to make, but for 3 directors. It was going to be Quentin was going to do the first story, Roger Avery the second, and Adam Rifkin was going to do the third story.
Wow.
But
I
don't
the
think-
only guy I've talked to on the phone out of those three.
and I don't think
He's a great
Name
guy.
dropping in this episode.
Oh no, he's a great guy. He made a video for me once.
I don't know any of these fucking people.
Adam Rifkin.
we co-wrote a movie. No,
If Adam Rifkin ever listens to this and he won't, thank you, because he didn't know who I was. I messaged him on Facebook to make a video for an event, and he another did.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
He's a nice
Yeah.
dude.
That's really
I'm a big
awesome.
fan of his. Go
That's
ahead.
great.
Sorry. Yeah.
By the way, I heard it in another podcast. I'll give it a plug with Adam Rifkin recently. Best Movies Never Made
Mhm.
has an
No,
Adam
it's good.
Rifkin.
Yeah, it's a good podcast.
And the Adam Rifkin episode is outstanding. So check it out
Yeah.
if you get a chance.
That's so
Big fan of Adam Rifkin.
He talks about a Planet of the Apes movie he never got to make, but he's just great to listen to. He's a fun guy. So anyway, then the movie morphed, and apparently Tarantino decided he wanted to do this nonlinear thing. By the way, Adam Rifkin I don't think was ever interested in Pulp Fiction. It was
They
somehow
wanted him?
They wanted him or
That's-
something.
Okay.
It's really cool. Imagine
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And looking back on
Yeah.
that now.
Yeah,
It's,
and the nonlinear thing kind of came later, and then like Bob and I were talking earlier, it eventually got to the point where they went to Amsterdam,
Yeah.
Tarantino, and that's where Royale Cheese and all
That's
that.
awesome.
And Roger Avery, and they like laid out all these different projects they had,
They said that was the best scenes they've ever written.
the best scenes they'd ever written.
Just scenes.
Just scenes.
Like from all their projects, their ideas, the best scenes they've ever written, they put it all out on the floor.
and
And they're like, how do we make this a movie?
I think there were
awesome.
2 scenes from a script called Open Road, which was Roger Avery's movie that became True Romance, that he also got
Mm-hmm.
kind of screwed over.
okay.
Because Tarantino rewrote all of that script too. There were 2 scenes in Open Road that they took from that script, and the one scene was the watch and the whole boxing
Mhm.
scene, Pandemonium Reigns, it was called, or something like that. And the other scene was the Big Kahuna Burger shootout.
Right.
So those 2 specifically were Roger Avery elements.
The Genesis.
Yeah, that the genesis of those were, and then Tarantino rewrote those and kind of massaged everything. And then around the time of the movie, when the movie came out, he kind of said, "Hey, I really want this to be my voice or whatever," and he basically forced Roger Avery off of the screenwriting credit into a story by credit.
Mm.
And if you read Killer Instinct, if that's true, it's kind of was a little, it doesn't paint a
Wow.
great picture. But in his defense, Roger Avery constantly says that Tarantino's a genius. Everything you see about him is exactly what it looks like. And he doesn't totally throw him under the bus he kind of says, like, leaves it a little vague. Like he says, like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm a story by either or something. He doesn't
Okay.
exactly say
I
why.
read some stuff last night
Yeah.
in preparation where he actually said, like, people in an interview were questioning, like, this was your scene, right? And he'll be like, well, I wrote the concept, but he's like, Tarantino rewrote it.
That's right.
And he also directed it and edited it. You know, he was in charge of the final cut.
By the time.
So Avary totally was like, in the interview I read, it was like, his voice is like undeniable. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, like, he came up with the concept for The Watch or whatever, but he didn't direct it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, he didn't. He's not the filmmaker there. So he acknowledges that. I don't know. That's not bad blood. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
it was also like a 2015 interview.
Yeah.
So it was like he's already been to prison and back and everything.
Yeah. There is some. There is some.
He went to
other-
prison for vehicular manslaughter. Okay.
Yeah. That's
if you didn't know that.
2009.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But there's some other.
Yeah. Well,
There's some other weird. Like he doesn't really speak on this topic too much, but he does say things like, "What did you learn about true romance?" Or he'd say something like, well, "I learned never to share my ideas with a friend because they might accidentally steal it in a future thing." Because I think the "Sleep with Me" speech, the Top Gun thing, like that was supposedly a Roger Avary thing that he used to do and wrote down, and Tarantino took that and made it his monologue in that movie. Again, true romance.
A movie that I absolutely love, Rules of Attraction. I don't know if you guys ever seen that.
Yeah.
Roger Avary directed that and wrote it.
I do remember.
And there's a dig at Tarantino in that movie.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, when I think of Roger Avary, that's what I think about, is that movie.
Yeah.
I never think about this, and I don't blame myself because it feels like he's been erased.
From this
process.
from the memory of this. Yeah.
So,
but he shouldn't have been.
No, not at all.
No.
So anyway, we're giving him some time because this is a screenplay podcast, and also one other thing that's instructive is this was probably non-WGA. Again, we've talked.
He
about
also
it.
won an Oscar.
Yeah.
For this, like that's why he deserves some. He can't.
Yeah, you got to talk about it.
Yeah, he won an Oscar for screenwriting.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is a non-WGA project. They allow you to say you did story by, you didn't.
And you've run into that. That's like
it happens in non-WGA. You can have somebody kind of force you off just because they want to be on it. They want the credit. Once you get in the WGA, it's almost impossible. I wouldn't say it's impossible. There are some stories about that. Once you get in the WGA, it's more fair. You hand in your drafts, an arbiter will come in and pick who gets what and things like that.
So you think it's very possible, you're posing, it's very possible he could have had a lot more to do with the stuff we see on screen, and then it was just because the WGA wasn't there to judge.
That's right.
Story by.
That's right. Because now it just becomes a he said, she said kind of argument, or even just it becomes a negotiation. Essentially, it's just a negotiation. And my guess, maybe he got money for it. Maybe they said, "We'll give you $2 million if you get a story by." I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Those Weinsteins.
Something happened.
Yeah.
So that's it for the back.
But
good backstory.
No, it's good backstory, and don't erase him from the conversation.
No.
When it comes to, like, especially Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, like, those are the two.
I highly, and if this interests you, I highly recommend that book, Killer Instinct. It's a really good book.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about structure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the big one of talking about Pulp Fiction, right?
So this is the one I always go back to. So I read a lot. I get sent a lot of nonlinear amateur scripts.
But Tarantino does it. Sorry.
Yes, but Tarantino does it. And the thing is, I go back to Pulp Fiction as like it's on a pedestal because it doesn't work without the nonlinear. And we can go into this. It works because it's out of order. And if you put it in order, it's not as good.
It's still pretty good, but it's not as good.
Yeah. I think what's instructive about this, understanding why it works so well, is that just because you want something to be out of order doesn't mean it should be out of order, right? If it's just a gimmick, then what's the point? And people will notice that it's just a gimmick. Like Memento is a better movie out of order, right? If you put it in order, it's not interesting.
Oddly enough, True Romance was a script that was out of order, much like Pulp Fiction, that Tony Scott put back in order.
Wow.
And later on, Tarantino admitted it's a better movie for it.
Because it's in order.
Because
they were trying to do a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of this, which is they must have realized, it's more emotionally resonant if we do it this way.
Right.
So I just think if you're out there and you're like excited, like I'll give you an example. I just did a 3-episode series, and it was like a mini series, and everything was confusing from start to finish. There was no lack of orientation, and it wasn't because they were telling some Lynchian like anti-plot weird to be weird. It was because they told episode 3 first, then they told episode 1, then they told episode 2. And literally when I got to episode 1, like, which was technically episode 3, I was like, oh, I understand everything now. And all the problems that I had with the other 2 scripts were that this information was missing, and it just made it a muddled, confusing mess. And the reality was that it would have worked better if we experienced it linear. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that
it's like a gimmick that just wants to get depth out of something that's
not
it's not
it's unnecessary.
Okay, right.
It's always
okay.
what's necessary. I think the non-linear function of this is it's necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because this was a movie that once this happened, everybody started to do it. As at least in screenplay world. I mean, you see it in movies. Television does it all the time now. Like Breaking Bad, Lost was an excellent example. And I think what it does well, like, and what this movie does well with the nonlinear, is it allows you to start scenes way late, so you have momentum. So that it makes the audience very participant in watching, because you're guessing, who are these guys? Why are they talking about Royale with cheese? Where are they going? They seem like crooks, but you're learning on the fly, and you get to do that like a bunch of different times,
over and over.
And then later, what it does is it allows you to also think, wait, I saw that scene where they were there, but this must happen before. So you start playing that game too. Yep. So you're connecting as an audience member. You have this third dimension of thinking going on, where you're trying to figure out who they were, which is kind of a normal thing. You're trying to think how they're going to get to the place you already saw. And there's a bunch of things,
and then how it actually happened.
Yeah,
and that can be a lot of fun as a person watching a movie. It works a lot better, I think, in this anthology style thing.
Absolutely.
Than if you're trying to tell a true romance story. I think if you did it with true romance, it would just kind of get a little frustrating and like, why are they doing this? Just tell me the story.
Yeah.
I think on the commentary, on the Blu-ray, Quentin Tarantino says it's the right choice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Quentin definitely has snuck it in other movies of his, but he more does it as just like a flash forward.
It's
like,
really quick.
It's a little bit more like what Breaking Bad would do.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden we see Walt in the diner with a machine gun. Why is he there? You know, and then, flashback.
Right.
Pull back.
And I think Tarantino's more used it in that way lately.
Yeah. But
in this movie, it was a full-on approach. But I think it works a lot better because it's the anthology.
Yeah, I think that's the key. They each one of it's like you talk about the breakfast scene a lot. Jamie does. It's the opposite, the polar opposite.
Right.
It skips the breakfast
we
scene.
We never have breakfast scenes.
Actually, the irony is there's tons of breakfast
That's
scenes.
True.
In this
that is
movie.
true. That is true.
But the breakfast scenes are not where we're meeting the characters. They're after we've been with the characters. It's like,
there's a lot of diners. And
there's diners.
Well, I think that's just kind of signifier of he writes those. He loves characters indulging in
the best breakfast
food.
scenes ever in this
characters
movie.
Indulging in like vices is his deal. So
it's a little. This movie is one of those movies. Memento's used this way a lot too, where people will say, "Hey, do third act structure," and they'll be like, well, "What about Pulp Fiction?" And I think the way to view Pulp Fiction, you have to view it as several different stories, right? It depends on how you skin it. But in my view, there's 3 stories in this movie. I think there was an early script that had a table of contents, and it said 3 stories about one story.
Yes. That was a tagline they used too.
Yeah, and so I think there's like 3 stories. There's Jules' story.
Yeah.
There's the watch story, the boxing story,
right,
and then there's maybe the Maya story.
The Butch story. Vincent Vega story.
Vincent Vega, which is Maya, kind of
and
Jules'
together.
story.
Yeah.
They're the 3 I think of, kind of. Whether or not it's that.
It's a little.
It's a little muddy whether Jules has his own and Maya or whoever.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's three. It's three about one, and I think if you view each of those stories, they probably have something like a 3-act structure.
They do.
You know,
I
you
agree.
can kind of look beginning, middle, end.
They have inciting incidents. They have midpoints.
It's 3 normal movies
they have,
making up one weird
that's
movie.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, each of those have they all have your very, you know, it's a very non-traditional, non-classical story, but each of those stories have very traditional stories. They have characters with goals, stakes, obstacles, urgency. Your like standard recipe for a good movie.
And this is what I always say, like when people do throw Pulp Fiction, like, well, that's not 3-act structure. Well, you know, it'd be like looking at Creepshow and saying, well, Creepshow's not 3-act structure. No, well,
Right.
no, it's obviously, you know, 4
Yeah.
different stories,
It's
and
an
4
anthology.
different movies, and that's the way I think
It's
you
an
have to view
anthology
Pulp.
with great transitions.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
is the diner the wraparound?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
that's the.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
if I had to say was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
easily.
it's a bookend. We talked about bookends.
Yeah.
I think it's a. He even I remember in the title page, and I couldn't find this one online. It's probably out there somewhere. But he called it the prologue and the epilogue.
And
He actually listed a table of contents for, you know, he was just whatever.
That's
Strikes
awesome.
as fancy.
Right.
Yeah.
So he listed, but he called it, prologue, epilogue, and then the other stories were within. So then you have 5 chapters.
Gotcha.
Within it.
You had earlier, I was trying to get you to save it for this episode.
Okay.
You had talked about what the first diner scene kind of had that same effect that a horror movie in the hands of a madman scene had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Well, I found this movie. I remember people used to ask me like I'd say I like comedy and I liked horror and I liked horror comedy, and I used to point to this movie as being my favorite horror comedy because it honestly does all the things that I like from horror comedy.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it starts off with the scene in the diner, and it doesn't really plant this bomb under the table, but it gives you this weird dialogue you've never seen and you don't know what's going to happen. And when she gets up with the gun and says, "I'm going to execute every motherfucking one of you," and it's like, and then it just cuts to the music. It's like, what the hell am I watching?
Right,
you know,
right.
this guy is not the same guy. So my 1994 brain was just came from paintball. I had the paintball works. I was like, what the hell is this? You know, it was like being at a rock concert or something. I did not, you know, it was just totally amazing. Like I was just
Ozzy biting off that.
It's like it's
bat's
different
head.
in a way that you want to know more.
yeah, absolutely.
Or you know what I mean? I remember
Yeah.
that, like, because as a kid, I was not who I am
Yeah.
now. And if a movie even like remotely stepped out of line of like not being Back to the Future, I was like, puh.
Right.
But this movie, which is not that, I was
No.
like, I need, give me the next scene.
Yes.
I need more.
Yeah.
You know, like I
Yeah.
was enthralled.
And
by
it cuts out right when it's about to get interesting. It like boom, it
Right.
cuts
Yeah.
out, and then it shows up with some completely different things.
Creates so
you know.
much suspense
And
for
you're like-
a coming conclusion of that.
You're like, what
2
was
hours.
what was that thing, and how is this? And so all those things are going through your head, and then you just jump into the next dialogue scene. But I really didn't know what he was willing to do. I mean, in later scenes it shows this too, when the gun goes off and shoots the guy in the face. By the way, that's the scene also I think that was stolen from was quote unquote not stolen, borrowed from
Borrowed.
True
Roger.
Romance.
True Romance.
Yeah,
True,
I think that was a
okay.
True Romance scene. So shooting the guy in the face, like I'd never seen anything, you know, quite that crazy and
Oh my
just
gosh.
immediate.
Also, one of the funniest moments in film history.
Yeah, and played with such.
The nonchalant nature of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
moment. I don't think as a kid I ever saw anything like
The
it.
criminal mundane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The GIMP scene, you know, it's just like, what the hell is going on in this movie? You know, it's like it came out of nowhere. It was kind of disturbing, but also
I actually
kind of,
read a thing where Roger Avary was talking about the GIMP scene literally intentionally coming out of nowhere.
yeah,
Like
it's
they didn't
so-
want to like.
so bizarre.
I kind of wrote in the thing the Chekhov's gun thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no. It's like just this left
No,
ball, this
I
curveball
know.
that these characters now have to deal with, but it does serve a function. So
Absolutely, it
it
does.
absolutely
Yeah.
does. But
It's weird. I didn't get to like do a deep dive in it.
but
but
Zed's not like established. There's nothing established.
No, we're not waiting for them to like. Oh shit, he's about to go into that shop.
Yeah, right.
Like-
Nothing. It's just it is that.
Yeah.
But the whole movie, I felt like anything could possibly happen, and we were jumping around times. I didn't know where we were going to go.
Yeah.
They could introduce new characters. I wouldn't know. You know, in the whole movie, I just felt like I was in the hands of a madman, and that's why I think it's like my favorite horror comedy in some ways, because it feels like this madman's just going to make you laugh, and then he's going to surprise you and
Yeah.
kind of make you tense and scared.
They're all in
And
danger,
all
but
these
you don't
things.
know what.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
characters,
Yeah.
like especially Jules, he's kind of like your best friend and your worst enemy every moment of every day.
completely unpredictable.
Yeah, like it's just you're on the edge. You're on.
Shit, what's he gonna
You're
do?
living on the a blade. It's
That's
like
what we're gonna be. We're gonna be
Right.
cool.
right, right. I mean, and it's on the page too. It's but
Absolutely.
I mean, of course, it's Sam Jackson, but
yeah.
there's an unease to Pulp Fiction,
Mm-hmm.
more so
Every
than
scene.
all of Tarantino's movies. Like
I
this
think
movie
so.
is just
Probably.
uneasy.
I think that's the world too. The criminal world
That he
like,
created.
We're in a part where we're just entrenched in this world.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not reality.
No,
and it's obvious
it's
it isn't.
its own
so-
criminal world's
Right.
reality.
But
Definitely.
I think the instructive thing is if you can be as like if you're making something extremely violent, if you can come up with this great thing early on to just dump in there that makes shock people, then they'll think you can go back to anything like that again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I always think of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like when they chainsawed the guy in the wheelchair. I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah, oh
you
my
chainsaw
God.
a guy in a wheelchair, they
Wheelchair.
can do anything. You know,
Right,
they
right.
can do anything in this movie. I don't know what's gonna happen. You know,
But even with that, like, when this came out, it was not just a chainsawing a guy in a wheelchair. It was like, oh, you can do this with a movie.
yeah.
yes.
If you can do this with a movie, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Right? No, it's
No,
like
you're right.
it's not just like, oh, they killed a kid.
Yeah.
They killed a kid backwards.
Yeah,
you know?
holy shit.
Like, yeah. How do they?
And
do
they
it?
keep doing it.
They keep doing it, and I have no
my
clue when
God.
this kid's actually going to be
Yeah.
dead. Okay.
But I think going back, because I had never dug into the structure, and I didn't dig into the individual inciting incidents and midpoints, but they do have them. They all have a 3-act structure within them, the anthology segments. But I think why it needs to be this in this order is that we get to learn the lesson through Butch. I mean, this is kind of like bouncing forward to theme. But I think we can talk about the structure and the theme
No,
together.
let's talk about the theme. Yeah.
I think Butch is where we learn the lesson, even though Butch isn't defined as a criminal. I think it's like, is it like,
He's about to cheat in something that he was trained to do. Or
is
something.
is it that he's done this before for
I think
Marcellus?
Butch
He's
is
thrown other fights.
Butch is a redemption arc.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so he has
Of
to have thrown
morality,
other
like-
fights. It's
like he-
it's all morality. Yeah.
Right. Well, he might have also he threw other fights, but I also always got the sense that Butch was also a criminal, like
Yeah.
of just the general variety until he became a
Yeah.
boxer. So he's
Yeah.
done bad stuff.
And
Yeah,
okay.
and this
so
is
I
him
just wanted to
leaving
make
that
sure I
life.
wasn't projecting that to try to
No,
for
I'm
my
not.
thesis. I went, oh, I'm making this shit up.
Butch is not a good guy.
Yeah,
He's not a good guy. He's a criminal.
It's safe to say he's a criminal as much as he's a slave to Marcellus Wallace. Just like
He's probably done bad things and
he's probably beat people up for Marcellus Wallace.
he's probably killed people for money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt
Okay,
it.
so I'm not.
We don't
I
have
was
any
worried I was
information.
putting that there where it wasn't there.
We don't have that information, but I
Okay.
think it's safe to say he has.
in the graphic
thug.
novels. No.
Yeah, man.
Right,
in,
right.
The, in the in
Right.
the other canon, I was like, is it in Killer Instinct?
We're watching the story of a guy deciding to forsake his crime
Exactly,
boss.
and
That's
what
what we're
this
watching.
movie's about.
Yeah.
and
He
I
said
think,
he's giving the Godfather the finger.
right.
That's
he
what he's doing.
decides.
Yeah.
I am going to because I didn't. I think I didn't realize that's what this was about, but I think this is about imprisonment, and I think the criminal life that these people are in is their prison, and that they're seeking freedom from the prison, and I think what this movie is saying, and I think it's the Butch story that we need to see the Butch story, which is chronologically out of order before we see Jules choose the right path. Because he decides he's gonna do the right thing twice. He's not gonna throw the fight, and that's gonna get him out of this imprisonment from his from the warden, Marcellus Wallace.
Yeah.
And then, in his efforts to escape, he gets imprisoned again with Marcellus Wallace. They're imprisoned together, and he escapes again. And he decides, no, I've got to be selfless. That's pride. We're fucking with you. I got to be selfless. And he makes the moral choice to go back and save Marcellus Wallace. And that gains him his freedom, right?
Right.
And that, I didn't realize that's what this is about. And I think that that's what it's about.
I would say I totally agree with you that that's what Butch's story is about.
Okay.
Let me throw this out there just as an idea how I've read this movie for years.
And you got a wallet that says bad motherfucker.
Which is super geeky. I know.
By the way,
relevant.
It's
though,
relevant.
he had that before the movie. He was a little kid.
Oh yeah. I was the bad motherfucker, and then Sam Jackson stole that shit from me. I was the Roger Avary of wallets, and then
Tarantino
I'm sorry,
didn't
did
give
I
him the
embarrass
credit.
you, Bob?
it's fine. I do have one. It's so beat up now you can barely read.
I
The
love
bad
that you have
motherfucker.
He also has the same car from Kill Bill.
right. What was I saying? Oh, theme. So how I've always read this movie, as far as theme goes, there's always a bigger fish. Is that weird?
I like it.
I feel like the one thing Pulp Fiction always read to me is like this caste system of criminals.
There's a power play.
The
system,
power placement
absolutely.
and respect. I mean,
respect. Is
obviously,
there.
there's a whole respect storyline with
Mr.
Jules,
Wolf too.
and Wolf, and Marcellus Wallace, and with Uma Thurman. It's like there's like the whole thing is about respect and respecting the people, and respecting the bigger fish above you. Like throughout, every character fits into a slot.
Yeah.
On that ladder.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That always seems like if you don't if you take away the respect, you're gonna get in trouble. So we're all gonna, if you respect the system or you die. Butch, but I know Butch kind of subverts that a little bit. But
I kind of see my take. My take on the thing is
thinking right. No, it's not an easy one to peg.
Yeah.
It's not.
I don't really think this is a deep movie. I think it's more trying to be clever and fun, and it has its theme because it has like a kind of, these characters have codes.
I also don't think Tarantino is big on theme most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what his movies are
That's why
about.
I saw it and I was like, am I putting this on there?
No, I think I would more go along with yours, but maybe I just don't understand yours totally yet. Because I always peg the Jules speech as the theme. Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Which one? Wait, which one?
Well,
Ezekiel.
Well, not only
there's like you mean the Bible?
not
verse.
only
The path of the righteous.
not only the
morally right.
his interpretation of it. I think he says something. I have sort of notes. Maybe I'm the righteous man, tyranny of evil men, etc. But I'm trying really hard to be the shepherd. Like that's always like me pegging. That sounds thematic.
That is like a
Yeah.
statement of theme, though.
It
He's
sounds
trying
like a
to
mark.
choose more the right way,
I think-
morally.
And that's what Butch is trying to
And
do.
that's what
Butch
Butch
is
does.
trying to get out of it on his own way. He tries it in a weird way. But here's the thing with Butch. The reason he survives, in my opinion, is because he turns back and goes back and helps Marcel.
Yeah,
That's
I
why.
agree.
So he chooses the heroic
That's also
path.
why Jules
He chooses
survives.
that.
That's why
And
Jules
I
survives.
And that's
think-
why Vincent Vega dies.
Because he
Right.
doesn't.
So-
Because Vincent, he's completely dedicated to the life.
Yeah,
It's-
he
without
doesn't learn
question.
the lesson.
No.
And that's why I think there is a lesson.
And I don't know if Honey Bunny and what's the guy's name? What I don't remember.
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Yeah.
I think maybe they're on the path to thinking in that
Yeah.
way. Like that's kind of the thing.
Yeah,
So to
There's
me,
doubt.
Yeah, there's doubt.
they could or could.
They have a whole nother movie that's probably
Jules,
true romance.
Jules is
you know?
he's like the catalyst for them. Their doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
The shepherd.
So
The shepherd. Right.
Mhm.
He's shepherding them across
so
the ferry of crime. Right,
I don't think it's a really deep theme or anything. It's just kind of this heroic. It's almost like, to me, it's like it's never too late to be the good guy. Like no matter how bad
Yeah,
you are,
that's
in a world of crooks, if you make the decision today to try to be a good guy, you can be a good guy and you'll live.
good versus evil.
That's kind of always been my takeaway. But again, I don't think it's crazy.
I don't-
deep.
I think that's
I
perfect.
think that's a great analysis. I doubt that it was intended. Does that make sense?
I think this is very intentional. I think
You think it is?
maybe not exactly what and all three
All
of
our
us are
three
saying,
yeah.
but I think
maybe he approaches it
I
a
think
different way.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. He'll frame it a different way,
He's
but saying
echoing.
the same thing.
Yeah.
We're all kind of saying the same thing in a different way. But like, I think that's why it works best in this order, because I think you need to see Butch choose the right to do right, to go back and save Marcellus, and to see that he's free now
Yeah.
because he chose right. And then now that creates an expectation. Is Jules going to do the same thing?
Right.
Is he going to choose that same thing? Because we know that if he does, then he's going to be free.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say, while I agree with you that it has to be told in this order, I think you could rewrite it so it was in this order and non-linear. You know,
Oh.
Tarantino would have to, or I'm sorry, Travolta would have to survive. But otherwise,
You're
you
saying you change pieces of it
I'm not
and
saying-
make it linear.
yeah,
Yeah. Right.
Because if you,
I
Let me
think you
make
could.
Let me make Pulp Fiction better.
It would- yeah,
I'm just kidding.
exactly.
'Cause if you-
No, but my point being that I think the non-linear thing is just a cool thing to do. Yeah, mostly.
yeah.
But you know, but he could very easily just change a couple details, and it could have been linear and told the same story.
Gotcha.
That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha.
I love the non-linear stuff. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, and it blew me away.
I think it wouldn't be as revolutionary.
It wouldn't. Well, at least that
It
part
wouldn't.
of it
It wouldn't explode on the
I
scene.
don't think
like
it would have
did.
been as
No.
resonant though, because
No.
I think Butch would have been framed as the main character, and I think Jules is our protagonist, and he's the one we watch go through the biggest change.
See, well,
over the
what I'm
course of the
saying is
story.
you could tell the exact same movie, but edit a few details. So it's
Oh.
just, I'm not saying to rearrange it. That's what I'm
Oh.
saying.
You're saying you could tweak some
things.
details,
Yeah,
and
so
then it works just as well.
Like the only thing I can really think of that would stop it was Travolta dying a little bit, and you'd
Yeah.
still
That
do.
scene's really good though.
I love
Yeah.
that scene
I-
so
I agree.
much.
I love that scene. Yeah.
So that's the one thing you lose.
Yeah.
I think. Anyway,
I mean,
I'm not
Jamie,
proposing.
I have
never
no
thought
doubt you could make it work.
Yeah. I've never thought of
making
this
something-
before, but just when you brought it up, I was
Yeah.
like, I can figure out a way that you could do it
Yeah.
non-linear. You know, I just
Devil's advocate. We
yeah,
gotta have
yeah.
these devil's advocate
No.
arguments.
That's
yeah.
fine. It's just fun. It was funny to see.
yeah. Um,
Rewrite Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
it's kind of funny though to think of where it really starts. You think of it as this crazy non-linear thing, but if you unfold the movie linearly, it's like it starts with the watch. I think it goes to the two guys driving the car.
You're
Anyway,
saying if you reverse it into chronological order.
Yeah, I'm trying-
Butch
I'm
stuff
surprised that's
happens
not on
last.
YouTube,
There's
like-
4 days.
I'm sure it
it's
is.
a 4
Yeah, I'm
days.
sure it
It
is.
takes place over the course of 4 days.
Right. Yeah.
And the Jules thing would happen like at like 60%. Jules's moment of
yeah.
choosing the righteous path and choosing
Well,
morality, and his arc would happen, and
know
then there
what-
would be 40% more movies.
You know,
Right.
You know what it would make it really strange? Because I think it goes from the Big Kahuna Burger to the Bonnie situation.
Yeah.
And that would be like this weird diversion. Like
Yeah.
we're just starting to get,
What?
now we're in this thing where they shot a guy
Yeah.
in the back, and you
Yeah.
know. So it just doesn't
It's-
really
Yeah.
add up that much.
What's the best way I can phrase this? It's nice one. It's written out of order on purpose so that the audience awareness of what's going on is relevant.
Yeah.
You can't just take it. There's a reason. I mean, it's obvious. You can't just
It
take
hides all the surprises.
properly in the structure it has. Like you can't
Yeah.
just take a script and jumble it up.
Yeah.
What you're saying earlier about your
Which
clients.
is what I see all
Right.
the time.
Well, I finished the script.
all the time.
Now I'll take this page and
Let
put
me
it
take
here.
Z and put it on F and put
Right,
F
right.
and Z and like
'Cause
just because it's cool. which
'cause of what
is
the-
not. Yeah.
You got to setups and payoffs still exist in this structure of Pulp Fiction.
They are created out of putting
But
it
if
out
you,
of
but-
order.
right?
yeah.
If you put it in order, what Jamie's saying is like
It's fine.
it would work, but it wouldn't be like captivating because you're like,
Yeah.
well, we already know what's
Yeah.
gonna. Yeah, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
There'd be
I
no
mean-
joke of them walking in with funny clothes. That would
Yeah.
just be
Right,
funny.
that
well, I
was-
guess it still would be
right.
funny. You cut to them with funny clothes, but I don't know.
No, but it keeps you on the edge.
You're
Why
trying
are
to
they
why?
in funny clothes?
Why are they wearing those clothes? What's the deal?
It turns a hacky joke into like a genius joke. That's what it does. It's like this out of order thing. Yeah.
But my favorite thing about that last scene is, so when it suddenly takes Bunny and Pumpkin in that last scene, when we see Jules and Vincent and we see them in the clothes, we are like, oh shit, like they survived this scene. We know they make it out of the scene because we've seen them at night after that. Like, okay.
Right.
So what's going to happen now? If they survive, it suddenly changes your rooting influence to Bunny and Pumpkin, which it wasn't for Bunny and Pumpkin in the beginning. They're kind of portrayed as like antagonistic, and suddenly they become like protagonists just because of
we
the
know
way,
they'll survive.
just because
and
we
then-
know
yeah.
that Jules and Vincent survive. We're like, oh shit, are they going to kill him? And then suddenly since you've seen Butch make the choice to choose the moral right and walk away free, you're like, is Jules gonna kill them?
Right.
Or is he somehow going to choose to not kill them and also find a way for them not to kill anyone else?
Right.
And they don't kill anybody in that scene, right? They all walk away not actually ever harming anybody. Right? I mean, they shoved the manager's face on the you get on the fucking
Outside of the manager though, everyone
survives that
Yeah,
scene,
everyone
and that's
survives
the
that scene.
one. That's probably the one like anthology segment, other than the teaser at the beginning, where people. I guess the diner framing device is one thing. The diner one is the only one where people survive, right? Well, Mia survives.
Yeah.
I was
Nobody
gonna
gets
say,
killed in Mia's.
Mia's also to go with the theme that you guys were talking about.
Mhm.
Mia's not a criminal.
right.
She's not part of the theme.
Right.
She is an innocent that
Yeah.
is by her own choice swept up in the theme, but I don't
Yeah.
think she like does
Yeah.
anything to contribute to
good
this
call.
world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So her death. So weirdly, Vincent saving her,
Yeah.
it doesn't count.
You would think Vincent saving her would make him go like divine intervention.
Well,
like...
what I was saying about the cast, the whole like caste system, bigger fish thing, is that Vincent saving her is a hollow gesture because he's not saving her to save
Yeah,
her.
he's
Saving her
himself.
for
Save
himself.
himself.
Right? Yeah.
right,
yeah,
which is the
right.
opposite of what Jules has ended up trying to argue with what you
Right.
said. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to be the shepherd.
Mhm.
I'm trying.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a hard theme for Pulp Fiction. It's,
Yeah,
it's a hard one.
I didn't think there was. I was on your end.
Mhm.
I was like, this movie's not deep.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I like started looking into it and try to see why the structure needs to
I mean,
be
it's
this
also
way.
called Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Exactly.
You know what I
What's
mean?
that
Like,
saying?
right.
But I don't know. I think there is. I think it's saying you choose. Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a theme there. I think his instincts, Tarantino and Avary's instincts, are kind of going towards some theme. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's just the nature of it. You
Yeah.
start connecting dots.
I mean, they call it the path of the righteous. I mean, and like that's what they're trying to get him
That
to do.
I actually really like that. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
The path of the righteous.
the path, and he chooses the path of the righteous.
Butch
at
is the
end.
path of the righteous. Jules
Jules and Vincent is like, fuck this. There's no righteous
that-
path,
no.
and he chooses the wrong way, and
He
he
dies.
dies. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's there.
If I had to be satisfied with a theme, I like that better than mine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So mine
mean,
was more dark.
I don't
Mine was
know.
more dark. So I like that. That makes sense.
I always question: am I projecting this onto it,
No,
or did I? Find
I think with
it?
this,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
with the speech in the end,
Yeah.
like again,
I'm
like
trying.
saying his speech. I know he gives a lot of speeches, but that trying, it just seems like.
No, he
Yeah.
said the
thing.
theme pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
I
and he
mean,
puts it. They make it a point in the script. He puts his gun down on the table.
it's also like it's a speech that he gives while murdering people,
Yeah,
and then it's a speech that is the statement of the theme
Yeah.
too. It's like later on.
that's that rule of three. Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Rules of
haven't really
three.
talked about rule of three. Jamie, do you have like a definition for rule of
Yeah,
three? Do you use it?
Can you help us
I
understand
use
what that
it
is?
all the time, but
I use it all the time too. Yeah,
I do know that I have a definition.
Me
of it.
neither.
It's just- well, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It's like the first one establishes, the second one sets the rule. Like the
Mhm.
first one introduces
It's
the second-
pattern.
and then the third one usually takes it to
It's a
some different
reversal.
place or reverses
Right.
it or goes to the extreme or something like that.
It's a very easy way to
joke.
tell a
It's jokes.
small.
It's jokes.
jokes.
Introduce, establish, punchline.
Yep.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
you also, it's a
There
very
you go.
easy way to
Yeah.
handle subplots.
Yeah.
It's a very easy, instructive, and like we as people, we just experience things beginning, middle, ending. It's like a natural way we experience stuff. So like you can do it with jokes. This one does it with dialogue. It does it with this uncomfortable silence rule of three.
Oh.
The first one, she says to him, that's how you know when you're close with somebody is when you can sit around and have an
Right.
uncomfortable silence with them.
Mhm.
So that establishes it. And what's the second? What does the second one do? So the second one, they're in the house and they're silent together. They're dancing. They just got home, and he was like, "Was that an uncomfortable silence?" And she says,
Right,
"I don't
right.
know. Music, drinks."
Right.
And then the third one is after he brings her back to life. They're sitting in the car together, and she's got blood all over her face. She just came back to life, and they're just sitting in silence as they
It's a rule of
drive.
three.
This is
Yeah.
the rule of three. So
Yeah.
they do it. It's like
I was doing a log line yesterday, and it kind of it was a jokey log line, like, and then after this happens, and then this happens. And it was driving me crazy because I only had two of them. And I needed
you're
a
like
third. And I spent like so much time, like I had to kind of force feed a third into it because I was like, I can't do it with two. It doesn't work with two. You have to have three.
Darren Aronofsky conceptualized it so well, and I was looking for that quote and I couldn't find it. He uses rule of threes a lot in his movies, and he was saying that he believes that audience experiences things more deeply when you repeat,
Mhm.
and repetition is the key to emotional like connection.
Right.
And so, I mean, we are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And I was trying to say, how does that define it? Because I think,
Which is
you-
interesting in a movie that has so many turns.
Yeah.
if you think about
But
it too.
I was trying to,
Really,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So
exactly.
many surprises.
They still
So-
go back to this
So much
repetition.
repetition
And the
established.
Jules line is the repetition too. They tell us that line. We get to see that line 3 times.
Right.
The first one is establishing it. The second one is when he sees the miracle, and he is forced to. That's like the catalyst for him re-examining his fucking life and the speech. And then the third one's when he says it and he explains like, I'm trying not to do that.
I'm trying not to do it anymore. Yeah. I've learned
it's a rule of three. It's definitely intentional. It's in the construction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. Yeah. It's easy.
Do you think a log line for this movie could be written?
I don't think so. Jamie?
Yeah, I think because of the anthology nature, the problem is there's no one through line. There's a bunch of different
There's
through
no main
lines.
character either.
So I think it ends up you'd have to do something along the lines
just describing the structure almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, the lives of criminals intermingle as they blah 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 blah.
So
blah.
it's like it's a VHS cover at that point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it can't be done.
I think almost the tagline kind of the tagline that 3 stories to tell 1 story.
Yeah.
It's like you just add the characters in there. Like 4 stories of it's like a riddle. 4 stories of violence and crime tell 1 story of 2 hitmen and a boxer and a mob boss and his wife.
Right.
Like
it's not very good.
It's
not very good. Yeah.
In addition to anthologies, like one of the influences I feel, and I know he has a bunch of specific influences, but I was a big, like around this time, I was a big Robert Altman guy, you know, Nashville and not Popeye necessarily. It does. I love Popeye, but it's not.
So do I.
But there were these kind of stories about different people that flash from scene to scene to scene. And I feel that in Pulp Fiction as well. I mean, like Magnolia was a modern day version of that. Like it would just jump back and forth from scene to scene. But Pulp Fiction's kind of like that, but it's hidden a little bit more because of this non-narrative.
It's more stylish.
It's more stylish.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's like that. And those movies would be hard to write a log line for because it's stories about several people that are all surrounded by an incident or a theme or something like that.
And they're not trying to overcome a specific antagonism. Yeah.
It would be really difficult.
Yeah. The stakes are emotional and small and intimate. Yeah.
Would you guys consider, the 3 types of plots or whatever, what do we talk about? What do you call those?
Arc plot, mini plot, anti-plot.
Which one is this?
Well,
it's arc plot scrambled.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
But it also kind of works with mini plots, doesn't it?
It kind of does because if you view it all together, it's kind of a mini plot.
That's what, it. There it is.
The Altman stuff is mini plot,
right,
for sure.
Yeah, so, I think you the order that it occurs is mini plot, but the actual stories unfolding are arc plot.
There's probably some truth to that, even in Altman and stuff like that as well. But
yeah.
it's about more than one protagonist. It feels like so that kind of
so it kind of has to be that, right?
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
Non-linearness can sometimes lend itself to other things too. Like anyway, it's I think it's kind of on the spectrum of mini and arc. Yeah.
It's a good question.
Really that's why I added it in there because I was like, okay, well, what is it? I don't actually know the answer, so. Yeah, let's talk about MacGuffins though, because I think
this is like one of my favorite MacGuffins.
Yeah, this one's kind of classic.
The briefcase?
Yeah.
I think it's just the perfect MacGuffin because nobody knows what is in it.
Yeah.
It's just people are chasing after it and we don't really know why. And it's really not part of the thread. Like
not at all.
I don't think it matters to the boxing story.
As an adult, I read it differently now than I used to. Like, when you're a kid and you're worried about what's actually in it, like obviously that doesn't matter. Now I read like the MacGuffin not mattering as almost a commentary on movies themselves.
No, I agree.
I think it's meant to be that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and the way that this movie's story unfolds, it kind of came on the scene and was like, oh, by the way, movies can be this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was like the MacGuffin doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it never did.
And think there's something there,
No,
Bob.
right, and it's about the journey, not about the destination.
Yeah.
MacGuffin's about a destination.
I think this movie's constantly reminding you it's a movie and commenting on the fact that it's a movie.
Yeah. And how awesome of a movie it is.
Yeah. And almost teaching you about movies in the process.
Right.
I mean, even Jackrabbit Slims and stuff like that is about movies.
It's about movies.
So everything's
the
whole thing.
It's a segment about movies in a movie.
Right.
Yeah. And then the wolf says, just because you have character doesn't mean you are a character.
Right.
Like,
No, exactly. There's a self-aware nature to it.
Yeah.
And also,
it works really well.
And it's also like anti-movie while being completely pro-movie. It's just like it's hard to describe even to this day.
Yeah,
But that's with the briefcase as a MacGuffin.
It's almost the definition. Like if somebody said, "What's a MacGuffin?" I'd say the Pulp Fiction briefcase.
Exactly.
And I think is there a stroke of genius there because of the 666? Because it adds like this element
What is it?
that people
Is
have
it
debated
supernatural?
for.
Marcellus'
Still
soul.
yeah.
Marcellus' soul, he's Satan. There's a whole bunch
Yeah,
of theories that are
evil.
insane. They're just like nuts.
I have this weird theory that in Quentin Tarantino's 10th movie, it'll finally show up again, and he'll reveal what's in there.
The last
if it's
shot of his
Star
last
Trek?
movie.
Star Trek.
They'll find it on
They
another
find
planet.
they find the briefcase. It was all worth it then. It was all worth it.
What was it? Vigors inside
It was
it.
Or they
V'ger.
use
Yeah, it was
They
V'ger.
use the MacGuffin to like reverse time in
Yeah,
Star
that'd be
Trek.
awesome.
Oh my god!
But I mean, like giving it the 666 code gives it like some air of importance.
yeah,
That we know it doesn't
it
have.
assigns meaning that isn't there.
That isn't there, and it's
Yeah.
like that. It's saying something.
It's great. I don't know what it's saying either. I
Right,
think
but
what
that's
you
been
said
debated.
that a movie can be this because we're gonna pop a MacGuffin in here and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You're
It
right.
matters to the characters, but it doesn't matter to the story.
Movies were
Yeah.
never about MacGuffin.
These objects.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good.
Right.
It is your perfect MacGuffin because like we've talked about in Avengers, MacGuffin and in even Godzilla, MacGuffins that actually do shit.
Yeah.
And this one it doesn't do anything.
'Cause I think the purest
yeah, it's just-
definition of a MacGuffin is something that doesn't do anything and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
You know, that's so like a lot of times I'll use like the Lost Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm not sure that a purist would be
Isn't
like, "No,
MacGuffin a George Lucas word too? Or
it's
is-
Hitchcock.
It's
Hitchcock's word, right.
definition.
But I think a
Yeah.
purist
Oops.
would be like if same thing, you know,
Yeah.
Hitchcock,
Right.
Lucas.
Lucas.
But if I said if I
That's big
a
oops.
purist might slap me down and say, no, the Ark of the Covenant isn't MacGuffin because we know it does something, we know what it is. But the briefcase is the perfect example because we have no idea why it's important or what
Yeah.
they want to do with it.
We don't even know what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's
I
the
love that.
perfect
Yeah.
example.
But they're willing to murder people for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a goober, as Spider-Man likes to call it, right?
A
Was it
goober.
Isn't
Yes.
that
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the briefcase, it seems like it's driven like by the movie seems to be driven by greed, but yet Vincent, when he doesn't care about what's in it, he's just
No.
like, yeah,
Cool.
we got it,
We
We're
got
good.
it.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And
That's a
like
good
he's
Travolta.
not. There's like the heavenly light shining on his face, and he's like completely like
He's so
whatever.
disinterested.
So it's like this dissonant, like, okay, it's amazing, but also apparently it's whatever. Yeah,
I agree.
MacGuffins. I mean,
yeah.
that's the only MacGuffin in the movie too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
well,
it.
I guess
The watch.
the
Yeah,
watch
The
counts as a
watch.
MacGuffin, but
It-
that's
It
has
has
meaning.
Yeah.
That's character in
That's
that.
the thing. But the weird thing about
But only one person is after the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Many people are trying to get the briefcase.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Heroes and villains are trying to get the briefcase. Villains aren't trying to get the watch. Just Butch.
Just Butch.
Just Butch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's something we talked about on a past episode I thought would be a good relevant topic here, which Jamie brought up, which was the off-screen movie.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what episode that was where we talked,
We talked
about
about
that.
it a bunch.
There's a bunch
Yeah.
of episodes.
I think you brought it up first with Avengers.
Yeah.
And what was the concept of that?
So the idea is it's a Terry Rossio thing I read. If you go to wordplayer.com, there's a whole article about the off-screen movie. And his theory is that great movies, if you look at them, there's a great movie going on off-screen as well as on-screen. So the simple example of that would be something like The Road Warrior or something.
Mhm.
We see one movie on screen, but the whole time there's this whole war for gas going on all around them, or a war movie in general or something like
Yeah.
that. So that's generally the idea of an off-screen movie.
And that's a litmus test for your idea?
I think so, because I think maybe there's some, I don't know, atmospheric tension in there or
Yes,
something.
some
You know,
built-in
there's
for the-
other
It's, like
types.
it's almost
Why
like
here?
world
Why
building, but
now?
your intimate story with a world building premise.
Yeah.
Right,
I
You
think I think if
Like-
you got a
like
good
the first
why
Purge
here, why
movie,
now,
maybe?
that's built in.
right.
Yeah.
And I think also like in this case, it could also mean like what the other characters are doing while your character's doing
Yeah.
something, you know, and that kind of off-screen stuff. The scenes you leave out.
Right.
Are they interesting? Because I think they give momentum to the scenes. They give
Yeah,
some
you're
tension
thinking
to the
about
scene.
them. And you're right, Bob. I mean, you're thinking about all of this sort
Yeah,
of
that was
stuff.
kind of my contribution to the
Yeah,
outline
I
this
was
time, because
like-
I was like, this very few movies feel like everything's happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mhm.
Pulp Fiction absolutely does.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like all the characters are in constant
And the
motion, even when we're
yeah,
not
the
seeing
ones you don't
them.
see, like what's Marcellus Wallace doing right now?
Right.
Like definitely.
It's like a constant active menagerie of crime happening.
world.
Right.
the crime world. Yeah, you think about what's
Yeah.
the wolf? What else did the wolf do today?
I guess
what
my question
other
is,
mess is he cleaning up in an hour?
my question for us is, is why does it feel like that? How's that being accomplished? Because I don't know if I can answer that question.
I think that's in the world building. That's a good question. How's that instructive?
How does he achieve that? They achieve it. Sorry, Roger Avery.
How do they achieve
How do
that?
they achieve it? Yeah,
that's a good.
It's a good question. I don't have an answer. I've been thinking about it.
I think from the very start, when you meet those two, the couple, like in a diner talking about robbing a bank, you're already like, this is a side of criminal life I've never seen before. Just hanging out, deciding what the merits of robbing a bank or robbing a diner. And then every scene from then on, it continues that stuff. They're put into the. They're just driving down the street.
Look at Tony Rocky Horror getting thrown out the window. That's part of the off-screen movie.
It is,
things like that are just inherent in this.
Maybe it's Tarantino's. I mean, he does this in all of his movies, but his inherent lack of exposition. The characters talk about anything but exposition. They'll talk about themselves. They'll talk, things that define them. Things that don't matter, but they don't talk about what's going on.
That's true.
And for some reason, that adds to this.
Because you're
feeling
grasping for the purpose of the scene.
Exposition usually takes you out of a movie.
Yeah,
it reminds you you're watching a
exposition.
movie in the worst way.
Exposition.
Bad exposition reminds you you're watching a movie in the worst way. He like removes all of it and then puts in character. Completely. It makes you feel like you're watching something more real.
Information.
Yeah. Keeps you asking questions every
you're asking
moment.
Questions. Usually the solution would be to throw a character in there who asks questions to answer for us.
But the audience,
the lack of anyone asking questions makes us ask all the questions.
You don't get any like when you say you do punch ups. You don't get the guy going, "But why are we doing this?"
The studio notes.
Right.
The studio notes would have Jules and probably have Jules and Vincent while they're driving while they're driving to and having the Royale with cheese, talking about, okay, we're gonna go to Marvin's. And we're gonna do this, and we're gonna. Here's our goal.
Instead of just talking about
the Royal House Cheese, so we're asking, what's their goal? Where are they going? It's like the lack of establishing goals and stakes. I mean, they are established, but
they have them.
Yeah, they have them, and they are established, but it takes a long time
to get to know.
learn them. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right, but we don't find them out.
Yeah, until later.
So the assumption is that there is something going on in the viewer's mind, I guess, and that makes it feel like there's.
Who are they doing this for?
That adds to that whole movie. There's other movies
Marcellus
I don't know
Wallace.
about.
Who's that? Yeah.
Right. I don't. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I think the fact that no one's asking questions is very interesting. Yeah.
Some sort of.
I never thought of it that way.
How not to write exposition. Just don't write it sometimes. That's interesting. I don't want to say that for your clients, Jimmy.
No,
but
if I ever get, not to knock my clients, I got a lot of talented clients.
Sure,
but if I ever had a Tarantino, Tarantino doesn't need my notes, man. Like,
right,
and that's.
I'm never gonna have somebody come in and not have exposition and it work.
But
right.
Honestly, it's
they wouldn't even be hiring you if they were right.
I see a lot of screenplays that would start out with the two guys in a car talking over the mission and establishing in a very on the nose way who they are, what they are, why they're here. Before you get to that scene, and it's not very gripping. For your first scenes, scenes in your screenplay really all have to be these kind of great gripping, grab them by the throat kind of scenes. And
on paper, though, is this?
Oh, there's lots of rooting influencers. It's about rooting interest. It creates rooting interest. They're fascinating characters. They're talking about something. Like in a scene, we kind of understand they're criminals. Just by seeing the previous scene with criminals, somehow we know they're criminals, even though it hasn't told us they're criminals. And we're like, okay, we're just seeing two criminals like talk about nothing in the
it's our ordinary day.
No one says hitman.
Yeah, no.
Ever. Like, you know what I mean? No one ever says like.
Honestly, it feels like a cop show where two cops would, cops would kind of talk about this together.
It's almost a Dragnet.
Dragnet kind of thing.
Yeah.
we're back together. We're partners. We gotta talk about
it's
the stuff that
very
we're doing.
Dragnet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even
okay.
one of my favorite things that he says is when he goes up there and says, "Okay, game faces." You know?
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
it's like time to
Yeah.
put on the
And
act.
and there's that moment which I always love, which I've never read the script of Pulp Fiction, but I hope it's in there where he goes, "Let's hang back for a second. It's not time yet."
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
And like, and in that moment, the first time I watched, I was like, "Not time for what?"
Right.
yeah.
And why is it
You're-
not time
you're
yet?
Desperate to know.
Right. He
That's
doesn't even
so
look at his watch
interesting.
either. He's just like, "It's not time."
And
yet."
that's so not classical. That's so not arc plot
Right.
writing that way. That's
Right.
not arc plot writing at all. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because
I don't
arc plot would be like, we got to get in there. Like, oh, how much time do we have? And that would, yeah, interesting. I never thought about it like that.
know. It's something I didn't have an answer for. So,
Lack of orientation is actually works in this favor.
which is not like something I don't want to. I would say don't be.
No,
it's
don't do
bad
that.
instruction.
So here's what's interesting about, I mean, we haven't talked about this, like, so much of what makes this work is the intangible writer's voice, you know? It's like it can't be taught. Like, so much of why this works is Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary's
Right.
voice and style. And that's not something that's, like, really instructive. They can't be taught. And that's, like, a huge part of the recipe for why all
Some
this
people
works.
just have magic.
Yeah,
and you
it's the
can't-
magic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I always think breaking rules isn't going to ruin you. It's just a bigger risk. That's
Yeah.
what I always say. So, like, I've had students, you know, I'll teach, like, hey, dialogue, the purpose of dialogue is it's an action. So think of the character's goal. They're trying to achieve an action.
Yep.
How do they do it? One of the ways they do it is with dialogue. That'll help you write scenes, so you don't write scenes that are just meandering. Hey, how's the day going?
But then Tarantino
Yeah.
writes meandering scenes.
So
right.
I always get a student that raises
Yeah.
their hand and says, "Hey, what about Quentin Tarantino? It seems like that's all he does." And that's not exactly true, by the way. But
No, it's not. It's not.
it's you can see in this Royale with cheese. Do we really need to talk about a Royale with cheese? Yeah, you know, this kind of stuff. And the reality is, I love those scenes, but it's just taking a risk, because I think if I hand those tools to you, student in my class, you're probably going to write a scene. Hey, how's the weather? It's great.
Yeah.
What are you going to eat? Scrambled eggs. And it you know, that's the risk. So
Yeah.
there's a risk.
Yeah, a great example outside of Tarantino I could think of is like Cabin in the Woods.
Interesting.
Cabin in the Woods is a movie that opens with two guys talking about installing cabinets in their kitchen, and then title screen.
Yep.
And it's a
Yeah.
horror movie. You know what I mean? Like,
And I'd say Josh Whedon's
Yeah.
another guy that would
Yeah.
pull that stuff
Probably
off.
But
Yeah.
see,
I'm saying other people have done it.
he does
properly.
the same thing that Quentin Tarantino does. So I get the hands raised
Mhm.
too all the time.
But-
Mainly on Twitters. Mainly if I'm
Right.
frustrated and share. Usually I'll only share like what I think is a valuable.
It's a master clause to all lessons.
Yeah.
If you're not a master, here's the lesson.
you've
Right,
said
yeah.
that before, and that's so good. But you
Yeah.
can't tell that to a person who wants to hear your
Because
thoughts on
they
it.
hope they're a master,
work.
right? Yeah.
But-
Everybody does think they're a master.
No, I
That
know.
does this stuff.
I
But
don't.
like his non-events, like, yeah, it's a non-event because nothing really consequential happens, but they're setups. The Royale with cheese is a setup, because that Brett scene is not as tense or entertaining or emotionally satisfying without the setup of the Royale with cheese. If he comes in and he's like, "Hey Brett, do you know what they call the thing?" It's okay. It's an okay joke, and the metric system is kind of okay, but it works because that whole scene was just there to set up him throwing it in Brett's face, and then suddenly there's more tension in the scene because he's like, "Check out the brains on Brett."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
also, it undercuts their kind of machismo factor.
absolutely.
You know, so we know these guys, they're kind of likable, and we know this is a little bit of an act that
yeah,
they do. This is
exactly.
their job.
They're kind of
They kinda come in there.
goofballs.
And that's part of the dynamic of the scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also really love cheeseburger knowledge.
Yeah,
So the big
yeah,
kahuna
exactly. So it's like, oh shit, they're it's almost
Right.
like they're like excited about it as much as we are. Like, burgers are here. They're gonna talk about burgers again, and we just loved how much they talked. But I think there's multiple scenes. The uncomfortable silence is a perfect example. That's a non-event scene where they're talking about how you really know somebody is if they can share uncomfortable silence. But it's the dialogue set up to make something later happen more meaningful and more resonant. So it does have purpose.
The Big Kahuna Burger
It speaks
scene,
the character way more than people give it credit.
the Big Kahuna Burger scene is a good example. That is an action scene. That's people trying to achieve a goal using dialogue, but they're not doing it on the nose.
Right.
He doesn't just come in and say, "Where's the suitcase?" or something. He comes in and he's putting on this character to scare the people. Like, I'm going to be this crazy character.
If anything, I almost read it as like a superhero scene.
Yeah.
He's putting on his Batman face to scare
and he
them.
Says it.
Yeah,
I can't remember the role. It's like assume the role. I think it is something like
yeah.
All right.
Why else? And I mean, that's just like the mark of him. But why do the whole Marcellus Wallace joke? Why even bother with any of it? There's no reason.
It's what
only
his character does to get what he wants.
Does he look like a bitch? You don't need to say all that.
And that's
You could have shot those two guys dead, and it's done. Yeah.
And the scene on paper it has the same start and end. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not nearly as gripping.
Yeah. And
it doesn't have tension.
And you take out the Royale with cheese setup.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's that one kind of rule: everything's set up or payoff. So if nothing else, if your scene has no other purpose, at least try to make it a setup for
if
something.
it's a non-event, if there's something in there that plants the seed for later.
Yeah. And those scenes plant the scene for Tony Rocky horror. They kind of introduce you to the characters. They give you a feel for their non-hitman dynamic, so it makes the scene much more interesting than if it was just two mean guys coming in the room and scaring people. And so all those things are there. And if you're still going to break rules and think, oh, well, I can talk about anything in the diner scene, just know there's an inherent risk there. That's all. It's not that you're going to fail, but there's a better chance you're going to fail. That's what I'd say.
I like that. Yeah. It's not that. It's a proceed with caution.
It's a proceed with caution. That's all.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction is not the type of thing you write from reading a book, right? Like, you don't read a bunch of screenwriting books and you come out.
The people who are writing something like that are probably way less interested in what Blake Snyder has to say. Or what we have to say. There's probably people listening to fuck you guys.
But even though we're praising Pulp Fiction, you know what I mean? Like, we're not sitting here bashing it.
I feel like now is it's not on the paper. It's not on the list. And I totally forgot to add this. I feel like we have to talk about this.
Talk about it.
Format.
Format.
Okay. So the first 3 screenplays I read some amateur screenplays from friends. That's a whole other story. But the first professional screenplays I ever read in 1999 when I was learning this were Pulp Fiction, American Beauty, and What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Those are all 3 heralded scripts. 2 of them Oscar-winning. None of them. Almost everything on the page is like technically not right. Technically not how the quote unquote rules of screenwriting. And I never went for the first year. I never went to a class. I didn't read Robert McKee's story. I just read scripts. I read like 50 scripts before I ever read a screenwriting book. I read like 50 scripts, and I spent like 5 years unlearning all the lessons I took out of the Quentin Tarantino script. Like, because he has tracking shots. We're going to put this song in it, blah, blah. He does all the things that, the quote unquote gatekeepers say not to do. And I think it's instructive in 2 ways. It's instructive in that he won an Oscar, right? But it's also
right. What bad format,
right? It doesn't matter, right? And What's Eating Gilbert Grape won a bunch of awards. What's Eating Gilbert Grape doesn't even have scene headings. Like, it's the weirdest script.
Oh my god,
dude,
really?
It's so weird. It has them on occasion. And it's like What's Eating Gilbert Grape is the script that teachers use to kind of show that format has its values and also can be played with. But an American Beauty does the same thing. It's like it's close up on this. It's a shooting script. These are shooting scripts, and that's not what the average writer is writing.
Right.
But then there's the argument that's out there that your job as a writer is also to pose as a director, and I just think people need to understand that you can do all this stuff, but and how I try to teach clients is I don't care what you do. My taste, I learned from Quentin Tarantino. You know what I mean? This is how I learned. You write the songs in, you write the camera angles, you write everything.
Right. Yeah.
But my job is to make people aware and prepare them for like the battleground, which is the battleground is like the people on the chain, Jamie, right?
Mhm.
Like there's someone, an actor somewhere, or a reader for a producer, or someone on the chain who is the one person standing in the way of your script getting past them. They have these snooty ideas of what can and can't be done, and everything Tarantino does in the script, they'd be like, "Fuck that guy."
So you're saying this has been a roadblock for learning for
many
formatting.
people.
Wow,
Many people
that's
have taken Pulp Fiction's lessons and put it in their scripts and then failed just because of that.
There is. I'm of two minds of this. So I really am of two minds, because if you read a lot of recent spec screenplays, and I advise people who want to write screenplays to read recent
new
spec ones. But you'll see that the ones that make it, they do have this style, like they know what they're doing and they don't give a shit about everybody else. And they sort of approach it the way Tarantino kind of does. Like he's like
a man who calls his scripts literature.
Yeah, like I'm the one.
Yeah,
I'm
he
the
does,
one who
so,
and I almost don't want to. It's almost scary to say, because just like the other thing I said, do it at your own risk.
It's a proceed with caution, absolutely.
However,
God.
I think at some point you're going to need to build to that swagger. You're going to have to get to the point where you know it all and you got the swagger, and you're like, you don't tell me how to write a script. I know how to write a script.
Yeah.
But the way to get there isn't just to start there and say, I know how to write this. This is the problem I have. Most people just start. Nobody can tell me. Anybody tell Quentin Tarantino how to write a
whatever
script?
you want.
All I'm advocating is do the study. Look at the recent spec scripts. Look at the old ones. Write a few scripts that use the rules. Then start to develop your own swagger.
Yeah.
Don't just break out the gate and say, I'm not going to use scene headings. I'm not going to do this. Nobody cares.
And this is
I'm gonna do
specifically
camera.
if you're trying to sell.
Absolutely.
Who cares?
I always want to read. I know.
If you're
Right.
shooting it,
Who
write the
cares?
fuck, whatever.
Yeah,
the fuck
like
you want.
if I write a script for myself, it's a mess. I don't care.
Write it,
I gotta-
write it in Excel.
So I got a question.
Write it on fucking legal
Yeah,
pads. Who cares? Yeah.
So
I
I
used
get
to
a
write
lot.
shot lists when I used to do my.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used
Right.
So I get a question. I'm bringing this up because I think it's important to talk about.
But no, I think it's good because Tarantino is known for the script.
Yes,
The actual format.
He writes
You're right.
170-page scripts.
Right,
Right.
right.
You put. If a reader is getting a 170-page script, they're gonna groan and hate it before they've opened a single page.
The Hateful Eight was almost just a published script.
Oh my god!
Right.
That was
But
almost what that was.
He can do whatever he wants.
Well,
He
we
can.
know that. You're right.
So for instance, I can't remember if there's songs in Pulp Fiction. I feel like there are.
Probably.
What do you mean songs?
Songs actually specified. I know, like George Lucas in American Graffiti, every single scene heading has a song. I never discourage. So I have the most things that people ask me about are format.
Yeah.
People,
Yep.
random strangers, send me tweets about format.
Mhm.
So I talk about this a lot, and I always say the same thing. Like, look, you can do whatever you want. But if you do that, understand that there are people somewhere on the chain who are going to let that distract from your story, right? So, for instance, the song. Who cares what songs it is? If that sets the mood, but you have to know two things. Some people are going to be like, fuck this writer who puts a song and thinks that they're like powerful enough that song's going to keep. Number two, if it is an awesome script, it may cost $70,000 to license the rights for that song. And the director may even be like, dude, this song is perfect for the mood, but we can't.
There's no way we're ever going to get $1 million.
We're not going to give
We don't have the Stranger
$70,000
Things
for this
budget.
song. So my question is it necessary then? What is the point?
I've heard screenwriters debate the song thing, and most of them fall on the side of I do songs all the time, write them, put them in. But I actually personally fall in the category you said. Like, I'm usually cautious about it. And the reason is because I think it can take, when I read it and I see the song, it takes me out of the read a little bit. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. They put a song in. And I think about that for a second. And then I
you
go,
gotta play music in your head.
yeah. And then I'm like,
Pause
well,
it, or if
right.
you don't know the song.
yeah.
Right.
And I
yeah, right.
Cool, dude.
I remember I read one script recently where somebody put a song in there by some group. I'd never heard of it, and I read through the script, and then I asked them a question about it, and they said, "Oh, that's a band that's in that world." I'm like,
Oh, it's
I'm
just a
like,
band
what?
in the world.
Yeah, I'm like, why did you put it in there? What was I
So-
supposed to get out of that? So it was like,
That makes
It's
me
like
want to
they
read
play-
like musical scripts, like
yeah, musical scripts is different.
it was like
Baby Driver would be interesting.
Baby Driver, I bet he puts them in.
Yeah, they have
He's
to.
gotta
He
put
does.
them
They have
in.
to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
But he can also
he's
do what he
Edgar
writes.
Wright.
Yeah.
Right. He's Edgar Wright, so it doesn't matter.
And I guess what I'm saying is, again, it's not my taste. I don't mind the song. If it sets the mood, fucking awesome. And that's the argument. Is it necessary or is it unnecessary? Is it so necessary that you will risk, like you said, Jamie, the risk, that it's worth the risk of annoying certain people along the way who may just be like, not even pay attention to the dialogue and the story going on. They're like, what is this song on this page? And there's another song. It's just, it's a symbolic of the whole thing. It's like, if you're gonna choose to be like putting camera angles and you're directing on the page, there's ways to direct on the page. That's a whole other podcast. There's ways to direct on the page where you don't even mention the camera, but you're directing in every fucking description is a shot. And
Just
it's
don't
just
let the
way,
filmmaker
it's the way you phrase
think
it.
you're telling them what to do.
And also, it's,
Right?
it's
Is that-
another thing.
yeah.
Like, how many directors ever pick up a script
Right.
that's filled with camera angles and go to their DP and like, we're going to use this wide shot right here? No, it's irrelevant unless the director is writing the script themselves. And then
In that case,
it all
yeah.
goes out the window because they're the bottom line.
No, you
the
got.
buck stops with them.
That's what I was saying. It's,
Yeah.
You're specifically
But I get
talking
these
about people who are
questions-
trying to sell.
Guys, I get these
Yeah.
questions
I
all the
know.
time. I just got a question yesterday about a song,
Yeah.
and what I told him is, he was like, "I got the rights for the song." I was like, "That's great, like awesome, but I mean, do you need to put it? Are you going to direct it?" And they said no. And I said, "Well, if you're not going to direct it, you have the rights to the song. It's fine if it sets the mood for you, but." Number one, is that director going to know what that song is? Number two,
You don't like it?
are they going to like it? Number three, are they going to keep it even if they like it, right? So it's like, what is the
Right. And
value?
there are two different types of things too. There's some things like Tarantino may actually describe the soundtrack. I think
And I think that's what he does a lot.
yeah, I think I err more on the side like if you're describing something like I actually wrote a song probably for the first time in a script like last year. I remember it was just a dumb joke. It was like they're doing surgery and they put on Smooth Operator in
And
the
that's-
background or something. But that,
See, and look, it's impactful.
If you're writing
Right?
a comedy script, that would
It's
work because it is a
impactful.
punchline.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, like
There was a
that's-
reason
yeah.
why
and
I
that's
said it.
impactful.
And
Right.
if they don't get the rights to Smooth Operator, fine.
But
they'll
something
get
like it.
Doctor or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway. So you can. This is one of those things you can do if you have a good reason. Do it.
Yeah.
If not, think twice.
Think
Maybe skip it.
twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same goes with the camera angles.
Jokes are probably a great reason to do it often.
Jokes.
for sure.
Because the song's going to be pertinent to the punchline. So
Again,
sure.
it's not
Yeah.
my personal taste. I just understand the tastes of the people out there because I've experienced it myself. I've written things in. I've used this example in a previous podcast. I'll give this. I've had this two of the most ridiculous things. I had a guy who was like a producer's reader, and he was like, "I love your script. It's awesome. I can't wait to give it to my producer. My producer doesn't like adverbs, so give me a draft without any adverbs." It's like,
what?
so we had to do a draft with no we had to go in and cut out adverbs. So we gave him a draft without adverbs. And my point is like these people exist.
Yeah.
Like,
No. I recently had a producer that I never thought any of these things, adverbs, blah blah blah, really mattered. Even though I teach them and that's how I write anyway. But I did find I had a producer not too long ago that was like it was something that bugged them. They didn't like We See and things like
yeah.
that. And they were really
That's
a
what I'm
stickler.
talking about.
And I'm not Mr. Crazy We See, but I've taken over the years
Occasionally.
I'll throw it in if it helps describe something. But
It's a
this
necessary
particular
versus
producer was
unnecessary.
like, it takes me out of the read. I'd rather it not there. And that was fine. I deleted it. So they do exist. It's not a myth that some people don't want to see that stuff or are bothered by it. It's not a myth. I mean, this is a real producer. It was probably the first time I ever encountered that. like that somebody was
Interesting.
giving me notes on the style thing. And it took me aback at first. I was like,
It's
really?
like, what does this have to do with the story? But that's the
That's
thing.
what has
They
to do with
let
the
it
story.
distract.
They're
Right,
trying to
right.
sell the script just like I am, and they have opinions on how to sell scripts just like I do.
Yep, and they know somebody else out there, some actor's representative, is like gonna see it first.
They have more experience. This
Right.
producer has more experience with that than I do.
So it's just that those are the examples I use. Like I had another one, just like the adverb one, is a different case where the person was like, "Yeah, I hate ellipsis, and you've got ellipsis all over the place. You have to get rid of all the ellipsis before I'll even give it to this other person."
Right.
It's like, holy shit! So we had to give him a draft with no ellipsis. Like we had to go through and just be like, all right,
That's
well,
crazy.
there's 17 ellipsis. Let's go delete it. It's the same exact script. It just looks a little different, and now the person could possibly put it up the chain.
Right.
Another
Yeah.
place where this
So that shit exists.
Another place where this comes into play, like I had a script called "When Stuffed Animals Attack." Okay, it was kind of like Small Soldiers. And
Okay.
I
boy,
love it.
stuffed animals.
You tweeted about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
The
It's
spec tweet. Thing.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of an older script, but I've been looking at it, and the villain in it is Teddy Ruxpin. And I don't have the rights to Teddy Ruxpin, but I write Teddy Ruxpin. It's a
fuck
risk,
it.
but I mean, most people are going to get. If we don't get Teddy Ruxpin,
We'll
just
get
name
something
it.
like it.
We'll name it Teddy Buxpin or whatever. So anyway,
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
the
great
same-
example.
The
You
same
didn't have
kind
the
of
rights.
thing comes into play.
Yeah, man. I had a friend who made a
You put
film.
references at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this shit costs money. I have a friend who, in like 1990, I was like just getting into this. It was
Mhm.
like in 2000, he made a short film, and he got a B-side off of like Green Day's Kerplunk. It wasn't even like on Kerplunk. It was like a B-side for Kerplunk before even they were big Dookie. I mean, it was. My point is, it's not even one of their known songs.
right.
And it cost them $16,000 to use. And it was for like 10 seconds of it. It's like, why did you do that? But like $16,000 in like 20 years ago. And that's
For a short film 20 years
and
ago.
those are the types of
Jesus,
those are the types
yeah.
of roadblocks when you make these choices like that and put them in there that are going to keep it from actually making it to the screen
Right.
like that.
So
Anyway.
the moral of this is
Yes.
if
If
you
you're-
read a Tarantino script, he is not the jumping off point for beginning
Absolutely
to learn how
not.
to
And
write
I
a formatted script.
Don't learn how to write screenplays by reading his scripts
Or
because-
master scripts, probably. just
because
in
you'll
general,
have to
yeah.
unlearn a lot of the stuff that you learn, and I
Right.
had to do that for like 5 years. I was constantly doing the stuff. Oh, Tarantino, I was the guy. Tarantino does this. 21-year-old me is like, "Fuck you, man. Tarantino does this.
it.
I'll do whatever the fuck I want." And then I heard all these critiques from the people on the chain that was like, "Well, okay, then if this is going to keep me from moving forward, I'm going to have to change my strategy here."
Right.
And Jamie's in a position now where he can do what he doesn't. He already has that social proof, so to speak, that professional proof. Like you don't have to impress people with your format. See,
And still sometimes they ask
like you
for it.
said,
Yep.
it's insane.
But if they
Anyway.
don't, do you go kind of buck wild?
I tend to go buck wild. But I stay within. I don't do anything that's. I'm aware of the reader, so I'm not doing anything
That's
too crazy. And
The awareness.
when I make
Yeah.
choices, there's calculated reasons why I'm making choices. I fear sometimes when people make choices is because of out of ignorance or they're new to it and they're just like.
Exactly.
But it stops them from learning the real reason, and
Yeah.
they're not. So the intent's not always there. It's just like, who cares?
Who cares?
But and that's kind of a lazy position to be in.
Yeah.
I'm fine if you want to do something and you researched it and you figured out and you came to your conclusion why you want to do it and you had the debates online
Yeah.
and then you go do it. Go do it.
Yeah.
But just
Plus, if
do
it
it for that
enhanced the
reason.
material and it's necessary, like your smooth operator
yeah.
example, that's necessary.
Right.
Enhances the material.
Just know what you're-
most of the time they don't though.
Right. They're just cool. They're just like
Just
cool,
cool.
or something.
At the
yeah.
end of the day, just be thoughtful.
Be mindful of the
Yeah.
people who are gonna read your
Yep.
script.
Especially if you're trying to become one of the 0.001% of humans that
Yeah.
make
Right.
it like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you got to kind of follow the
Well,
rules a
it's-
little bit.
It's the
Yep.
comparison. Bill Martell uses the comparison that 700 basketball player, 100,000 people are really good at playing basketball, and 700 people get paid to play basketball. The same goes for
Yep.
screenwriting. 100,000 people are some of the best writers in the world. 100,000, but only like 1,000 in the world get paid.
You get
to
paid
do
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Do we have anything left to say about Pulp Fiction?
I thought it was
No,
the format,
that's fine.
His format
that's
is
fine. I'm just making sure we're done with Pulp Fiction.
I think we've covered a lot of what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to break down,
Yeah.
man.
I think we broke it down way more than I
did.
expected us to.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to? Did anybody learn anything?
I learned
that doesn't have to do with format.
I learned Jamie's horror comedy comparison that a lot of the surprises and the guttural reactions to the violence that's happening on screen, that Pulp Fiction does kind of function like you're in the hands of a madman who's telling a horror story.
I tell you where that really pays off for me. I remember just freaking out in the movie theater, like the whole audience was laughing and screaming. Is the needle scene, needle to the heart. That scene was just so damn effective. Like they're having little jokes. That's where it becomes a horror comedy. It's like they're trying. I'm not going to do it. You do it. You brought her here. I'm not going to. And it's that kind of stuff.
It's a great funny scene.
And it's all based on this underlying tension. There's this huge tension there. So the jokes are like extra spicy.
Yeah.
Because of that tension.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I love movies like that. So I love comedy as this dark underpinning where there's huge tensions there, and then you're layering jokes on top of it. And that's what I love.
Very
about
honest.
Yeah.
I
liked the kind of theme we came up with.
I think it's
the not my theme, the other one,
the Jamie and all of us combined.
All
it was sort of like
combined,
the three of us came up with some stuff.
The redemptive arc.
Sam Jackson.
Jules.
Yeah,
you choose
trying to be the chef.
Choose the right thing. You're gonna get freedom.
You leave crime. You live.
You live.
Yeah.
You continue to choose the wrong. The morally wrong. You end
righteous
up like
path.
Vincent. It's the path of the righteous.
The path of the righteous. Theme. How's that?
Yeah.
I really like that because I've never really thought about this movie in that way.
Me neither.
I don't know why.
Because it's just fun. You just sit down and just enjoy yourself.
As Quentin Tarantino's mother used to tell me. No,
that's so weird. That's so amazing.
I love that, dude. Jamie always throws out the most random thing. Yeah, we're doing the It podcast. Oh yeah, I used to be my manager.
Those two are kind of connected though. They're
Gary Doberman and
so Gary Doberman probably got some notes from Quentin Tarantino's mother. He probably knew her well.
Wow. Okay, well on that note,
we have an email address.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, comments in general, writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com.
That's everything, I think, guys.
Everything.
It's Pulp Fiction. All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.